Oh, you guys sitting over there? Scoot over, fella. Let's join the party.
I don't want to sit on the Thyatira urinal here.
Looks like you already did it.
Looks like I did.
All right.
Okay, never mind. We'll just sit over here.
There's the.
Can we please put that in the podcast?
You good?
Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, welcome to the ReThink podcast. Glad you're joining us. We're coming to you live from Turkey again. We are in Thyatira, right in the middle of the city.
Literally, in the middle of the city.
Yeah, it's just this small portion of the ancient city, located here in the modern city, and we've got some walls exposed and some stones and columns, and it's not really what we see around us that's so important, though, is it, guys? It's the message of what was going on. Into the first century, this is the part of the cradle of Christianity. I think we sometimes miss that, but a lot going on here, a lot of challenges to the people of faith.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, and you guys brought this up before we hit record, was just the location tells the story of what's going on here. I mean, we're literally in the middle of town. You can probably see it in the shot. Just we're right here.
Yeah. There's cafes and like restaurants and
people selling their wares, which is kind of the storyline of the Christians in Thyatira, the trade guilds.
Yeah.
You know, you had not just the typical faction. There's a sign over here that tells us lawyers, physicians, wool makers, linen makers, all kinds of different guilds. And my mind immediately went to like unions, but it's more than a union. It's, as I was studying, I felt it's more like what you might know of an Indian caste system, where you're born into whatever you do, and it's not just your job; it's the entirety of your identity.
Yeah. I think with unions in our context, there is still this separate piece of you've got your life outside of your job and you've got your life inside of your job. But this system was basically your job, your occupation was everything. You were inundated with this guild, and so you worshipped with them, you lived around them, you worked with them, and it was just an all-encompassing thing. So
your value is actually in being a part of the guild.
Right.
And so that's a big deal when Christianity comes on the scene, and now there's a tension between, are you going to participate in, idol worship, false worship, or are you going to have allegiance to Christ? And so, value, identity, all those pieces come together.
Which is interesting because what came from here was fabrics, wool, leather, which leads us to Acts 16 with Lydia being from Thyatira.
But she's in Philippi.
Yeah.
When in Acts 16, but she's from here.
Yeah, she leaves here to follow essentially her job, her income, to that place.
Seller of purple cloth.
Purple cloth. Yeah.
Right, which is expensive, hard to make. Right, royalty, all of those things.
Yeah.
So the trade guild and Christianity, boom. Here we have the conflict. I was listening to Joe Stoll share about the particular worship that brought that to a head here was Apollos. And so to worship Apollos, who was referred to as the Son of God, the obvious conflict with Jesus, the Son of the living God, and whether you're going to do that or not. One of the comments I heard made was, this probably is the most relevant of all the cities for us, because this is about your income, your pocketbook, your social status, your place in culture. And are you going to put Jesus first? Is he everything, or do these other things take precedence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a city of compromise, essentially. Is you got all these different religions, philosophies, Baals, idols going on, and the Christians here are warned, don't compromise. Like, you're unique, you're set apart. There's something that is different about you because of who Jesus is.
And what's interesting about this letter is it's the longest letter. It's the fourth church mentioned, but it's the longest, which is interesting. And it's also the only letter where, I'm thinking of the wrong thing, I think.
No, you're right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
There's this.
It's like the city itself is not that important in the whole scheme of things. It's an important city, but it's a long letter.
They have a problem which all of the churches except one do have a problem, but this one's problem is that
that's what
Jezebel element.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, man, we did the back study on Jezebel just for fun, and we got the reference to Hag from Hell, Jezebel.
Is that original to you?
No, it's not original.
There's
to
a
me.
band called Fling Down Jezebel too.
There's a band?
You know anybody
back
named
in
their
the
kids
day.
Jezebel?
Yeah,
Seriously?
Nobody.
we thought about it, but we decided against it.
That's better. Jezebel, we go back to 1 Kings, like 14, 16, 18, those stories of Ahab, who's noted in the Kings as he's the worst, right? He leads the people of Israel away, and that's God's measurement, where you lead them to or away from me.
Yep.
He led the people away, he led them in idolatry and pagan worship, and well, I love the description. It's like he's terrible, and he's married to Jezebel.
It's like a double whammy.
Well, Matt, I think you had the line.
Wasn't my line.
What we're talking about?
Professor of mine in college, he said that the last decision Ahab ever made was I do. But he also said that, oh man, I can't remember now. He said behind every evil man is an evil woman,
Yeah.
even wickeder woman, something like that.
Something to that effect, and that's the descriptor of Jezebel. Ahab's bad, she's worse. So the Asherah and Baal worship, I think there's a tie-in there too with the sexual immorality that's mentioned in the storyline, because Asherah and Baal, associated with sexual immorality, male and female, and so that's the calling to purity again for the people. You're going to compromise, or are you going to stay true to your
Yeah, because
calling?
part of the worship here was immorality, sexual immorality, and so obviously that goes against the Christian belief. And
Well, you
Well,
talk about, go ahead.
It's in the midst of that whole trade guild collection. Like they worship together, and
Yeah.
if you didn't participate in that, you were pretty much kicked out. I mean,
So
we
the
talked about this
festivals
on
to Apollos
yeah,
involve sexual immorality.
right.
Right.
In hopes that your job would be blessed
Elevated,
by
yeah.
Apollos.
That's the
So
excuse you
yeah.
used.
Yeah.
It's funny, we'll find about any kind of excuse we can come up with to do what we want, but
yeah,
mix that together with the belief system that's faulty. And
I think the compromise piece is kind of the overarching element in all of the churches in Revelation. Jesus is either commending them for not compromising, or he's chastising them for compromising. We'll see it in Pergamum. We'll see it, them commended for not compromising in Smyrna. All these churches, it's like, you've got the decision. Are you going to follow after me regardless of what it costs, or are you going to chase after these things? And we'll see it over and over again, but the things that you think are beneficial to you, the things that these people would have thought made them rich actually made them poor. The things that they thought made them poor, they're actually rich spiritually. And it's just this overarching element in all of these churches.
so that comes into the end of the letter to Thyatira, whenever it says, and you'll receive the morning star. That idea, and that phrase just really caught me whenever I read through that, and I hadn't given much thought to that, but that idea of like promise, the morning star is like this idea of provision, all this stuff, and then Jesus is actually referenced as the morning
Revelation
star.
21, the bright morning star.
Yeah, and so like,
Which is the chapter about the new heavens.
yeah, and it's like, so you're not just gonna get provision, like taking care of the now, like you're gonna get the ultimate. So it's the spiritually rich. You're actually getting Jesus. Like, don't compromise, because you're not just going to be provided for. You're going to get Jesus himself.
So you compromise and you get a little bit better culturally. You may have a pleasurable experience momentarily, but Jesus is just saying, don't compromise. I got way better stuff coming.
Well, you think about you mentioned this, the correlation here between Lydia and Jezebel. Just two opposite stories, right? I mean,
And she had a lot. Lydia had a lot. She's rich. In fact, she's a major funder in the efforts of Paul in the missionary work.
I mean, one of the commentaries says that the first church in Philippi was in her home.
Yep.
Or the first life group, if
Yep.
you will,
Yep.
met there.
Wow.
And it's just a crazy, crazy picture.
That's one thing to note as we go through the churches. The church of what we think of, large gathering of people coming to sing songs and
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about 30, 40 believers. Like when we're talking about Thyatira, you know, 30, 40, 100, you know, people in groups all over. And so Christianity started out as this, you know, group.
Minority.
Yeah, it really was. That grew into what we know it as today.
So you've got Roman culture and the power and authority of Rome, and the whole, we've seen this over and over, the Caesar worship and the do you bow in order to bless yourself. We've got Greek philosophical thought, the whole imagery and ideologies of that. And then you got Christianity, that counter kingdom, that counter culture of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to make that choice, it's exclusive. It's really exclusive. And it covers all aspects of life, not just our religious practice, but our life, our whole life has to be flipped.
As we've talked and leading up to this series, and we laid this out in the first podcast where we just kind of gave an overview of the book of Revelation, but we said that that the idea behind Revelation is not so you can guess all these different events or times or anything. The whole premise of the book of Revelation is that you get Christ. Like that is the prize. And so I think that is the overarching theme of Revelation, but you're starting to see that in these churches, that the thing that you really want, the thing that's going to bring you ultimate blessing is not all these things of the world. It's found in the person of Jesus. And that's no different than the lesson to us today in our church.
Well, I think like just being in this place and thinking about the city that has taken over, it's just a reminder, I think, for our church to hold true.
Yeah.
You know, to hold true to the word, because culture is constantly creeping in.
Yeah.
And here's what we see.
Well, what a picture. We talked about this as we came here today, but we're inside this walled place. The only reason it's of significance to the people here is because they get to charge money for people to come in. Like that's the only significance to them.
Yeah.
They're walking around with no idea what this actually means, or really no care as to what it means. And this is everything.
Christianity is basically non-existent here.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, like where we live in ministry, like we're kind of in an isolated pocket of the culture, but I think we're seeing that start to creep in.
Yeah.
And you know, I think every generation has said it about their kids, like, what will it be like for our kids? Man, like, this is a picture of reminding ourselves to stay true.
Yeah.
Don't forget what's right in front of you. Like the warning is there, and Jesus stands ready. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it almost is a incredible burden to just think about all the people that are living here clueless.
Yeah.
Well, it's he says here that you were doing more than you were before. You're doing more than you were before. And it's like a picture of a church that's headed in the right direction. They're doing more, but eventually we see what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Eventually,
Christ is not the
just,
center.
they just compromise away.
Yep. You fade into the background.
Yeah, it's not just this doctrinal truth that you got to hold to. It's a
way of life.
It's a life transformation. And when you don't have that, who wants to be a part of it? If it's going to cost you economically, if it's going to cost you social status, if it's going to take some of the momentary pleasures away, who needs that if it doesn't bring something better in the end?
I think one of the most, and this is really just for us, but I mean, this was for everybody, but one of my mentors always used to tell me that your kids, they need to see you not only as a pastor on Sunday morning, but they need to see you loving and caring for people in every day of your life. And I think that's one of the big burdens that I carry around personally, is just, man, do my kids see me living this, not just on a platform, but every day.
Yeah.
And we all fail, right? We all struggle, but I think we got to keep going back to the why behind what we do.
So you got the little kid who grows up here in Thyatira, whose dad's a Christian, won't worship at the temple of Apollos, gets exiled from the guild. So the little kid's saying, "Daddy, why don't I have?" And Dad's answer is, "We don't have because we have Jesus." And that sounds easy.
Wow. Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. The momentary, not just momentary, but maybe years
Yeah.
of struggle and being ostracized. And we know at times it gets worse than that. In some of these cities, it means life or death.
Yeah. This one was about losing your job. Other one's about losing your life.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
and to explain that to your child, you got to be living that at home. You got to be that's got to be
It's got to be real.
it's got to be real, or you're not doing it.
It's not just a religion. I mean, we're talking real relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say, yeah, well, I'm going to let Jesus be the Lord over this part of my life, but I'm still going to hold tight to this, and it's all of it.
All life.
Yeah, I think from all of these letters, what we see is that the church was never meant to cave to culture. The church was never meant to walk hand in hand with the culture around it. It was called to stand out. It was called to be different, and that message hasn't changed. It may look different in our Western society, but the church's call is still to be good news that runs countercultural to the rest of the society around you. And sometimes I'm provoked when I look around because it's like, wow, we tend to look a lot like culture, and we're sitting in places that are no longer, partly because they decided to compromise the culture. And so I think that's the choice that every church and every Christian has to make. What do I stand for?
From the cradle of Christianity to it is no more. That's where we're at. And we don't want to head there as a culture.
Yeah.
That's up to us. So the bright morning star says hold true, hold faithful. Well, Tyra, thanks for joining us on the ReThink podcast as we tour Turkey.